hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this Leveraging O4U as a First-Time Attendee panel. If you're here, that probably means that this is your first time at the conference, so congratulations again on being able to join us. I'm super excited for you all to have a wonderful experience. During this panel, I'll be asking our panelists, Alex De Silva, Alan Shee, and Evelyn Vargas, to share their experiences and insights as previous conference attendees, who I'm going to assume would say had intensely meaningful experiences at the O4Us that they've attended. I think that all these individuals would say that O4U helped them grow both as LGBTQ individuals and as people in the world of business in a very unique and meaningful way. Our panelists are now working professionals, and all of them have attended the conference multiple times. My hope is that you will all come out of this panel feeling like you have a better understanding of how to best leverage this conference as a way to learn more about your future careers and your lives as LGBTQ folks. So I'm going to go around and ask for introductions from our panelists, but first, I'll start off with a little intro for me. I'm Christian Raygoza, pronouns he, him, his. I'm a programming director for this year's conference and an investment analyst at AIG Investments. This will be my fourth time involved with O4U, twice as a student, once as a volunteer, and now, as mentioned, as a programming director. Some of my most meaningful experiences and friendships, my current job, and much of my growth as a gay person has been a consequence of my involvement with this wonderful organization, and I'm super excited to share some of those experiences with you all today. And with that, I'll pass it on to Alex De Silva to introduce yourself a little bit.
Cool. Hi, everyone, and welcome to O4U. It's a great privilege to be a part of this conference. My name is, Christian said, is Alex Henriquez De Silva. It's a long name. I work at PwC in assurance. I am currently based out of London. I used to work in the New York office, and I'm a senior associate. I've been involved with O4U. I think it was my sixth time. I went 3 times as a student. And all I can say is that this conference is absolutely life-changing. So I'm excited to talk to you more.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alan Shee. I use the he, him pronouns. I'm also programming director this year. But before that, I attended O4U twice as a student, and then I came back 5 more times in an organizational capacity or as a rep for my company. Echoing everybody else's sentiment here, O4U was really critical in terms of launching my career. I got my first job at RBC through this conference, and then I was able to form the right connections and make the correct networks, honestly, at this conference in order to get my PE job after banking. And then when I was applying to business school, this was a network I once again utilized to really help me with my essays, as well as all my interviews and when I visited college campuses. So honestly, there's so much I've gotten out of this conference personally, and I'm really excited to have you all join the community.
Hi, everyone. My name's Evelyn Vargas, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. I currently work as a senior investment analyst for the Board of Education Retirement System here in New York, which is a $6.5 billion pension plan for employees of the Department of Education in New York City. In that role, I have broad oversight over asset allocation and manager selection for our private equity, private credit, real estate, and infrastructure portfolios. I attended O4U twice as a student and twice as a mentor. And similar to my fellow panelists, got my first 2 jobs out of college through O4U and have made meaningful connections with so many people, including these folks on the screen. So it's great to be here in a community and welcome you all in as well.
Awesome, thanks everyone. So I just want to follow up with that, intro and just ask of you to start off. Each of you, what do you remember your first O4U experience being like? What types of feelings did you feel in terms of was it fear, was it excitement? Can you just describe what that was like for you? Maybe we can start off with Evelyn.
Sure. So I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. I think like Alan and Alex mentioned, I mean, Christian as well, we've been in this O4U game for a long time now. And so, I actually found out about O4U through a Facebook ad. So the ads worked on me. And this was in, I think, 2014. And I think, you know, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I didn't realize how powerful of a tool O4U is in terms of, you know, launching your career and also just building community. I remember being really intimidated by folks who knew what they wanted. I went to a liberal arts school in Connecticut. I went to Wesleyan University, and I was a sophomore when I first came to O4U. And back in the day, you know, investment banks were not really recruiting, you know, sophomores or freshmen like they do now with these accelerated timelines. So I was definitely scared, and I found a lot of solace in my peers who helped me. Peers who helped me get interviews later, peers who helped me prepare. And so I remember overwhelmingly a bit of intimidation and fear as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to echo Evelyn's sentiments. I also didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I was also in a really different place in my life where, as I talked about during the opening speech, like I still had a lot of internalized homophobia, particularly as it related to my Asian American heritage. And coming here and seeing actual representations of people who look like me in very high places in these jobs, that was such a light bulb moment for me, where I really thought, wow, I can do this too. And I can be fully out. I can be my authentic self in these spaces and still create a path for myself. And that was a really powerful moment for me myself. And yeah, it's also surprising how I keep coming back to the community I built at this conference in order to, at so many different stages of my life. And it's been such a blessing.
Just to echo what everyone else has been saying already, I think going back to my first O4U conference, I was the only person from my school attending. And I remember actually I met Evelyn, I think, at my first conference. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful community. Everyone's super open. Don't be shy. Everyone is happy to meet everyone, and try to look outside of your circle is what I would suggest. Obviously, this is a bit different because it's all done virtually, but it's an amazing community, and everyone was so welcoming to me, and we were all scared and we were all in it together, and so are you. So take advantage of this very unique community that you have with O4U.
Yeah, I think, you know, my first time, and from what I hear from so many people, it seems like there's two, you know, big obvious fears that everyone sort of encounters in their first time. The first bit is sort of the identity focused fear, right? A lot of us, this might be our first time being in a really queer space. Certainly when I attended the first time, I had never been to anything like this. I was not really out to anyone, which was like a very just like, yeah, a scary experience. So I definitely felt that. And then on the career side, the second big fear is like, you know, I'm a sophomore, I'm a junior, I'm a freshman. I'm just sort of getting exposed to these different career tracks, and navigating that is complicated and messy. I may have never networked before. So there's all this uncertainty around, you know, like what are the sort of like rules and regulations surrounding how to navigate that. And that can be really intimidating. So I think what we want to do in this panel over the next sort of 40-ish minutes is sort of unravel those two types of fears, talk about our experiences, and then also talk about the types of resources that O4U provides post-conference, and what those experiences have looked like coming out of this amazing organization and experience. So to start off with the sort of like career-focused side, you know, many of you were probably just in that Art of Networking session. Networking is something that you're going to hear a lot about over the course of the weekend. You know, Alan, maybe you can speak to this. You know, networking, building relationships is obviously a huge component of the conference. When you were a first timer, what was the experience of meeting all these new people like, and what did you learn about that process that made you feel more comfortable and effective over the course of the weekend?
Yeah, so networking can be really overwhelming. Let's just, let's just be honest about it, particularly when you're meeting so many people at the same time. So give yourself room to breathe, like allow yourself to unpack after you had a meaningful conversation, honestly, because you don't need to like keep going and trucking. Take a break. Think about like, and when this was in person, and I think it's easier now that we're all virtual, like write down like 2 to 3 things you talked about. So that way, when you do that follow-up that Jamie and Danielle were talking about, you have something very concrete to bring to that email and like say like, oh, we connected on this. I really liked XYZ thing. And I think something else that is not kind of talked about enough is people prioritizing breadth over depth. I think the most meaningful conversations I had with recruiters as well as students were not the ones that like I met at a like massive event. It was those one-on-one interactions where we really talked about, honestly, not even the job itself. Like people want to make a human connection. So it's talking about like shared hobbies and interests, and then maybe weaving in like, oh, like what do you do in your banking desk? And speaking from a recruiter side too, when I was working at RPC, those were the conversations I also remember the most, because just being honest, banking's kind of Ms. So I don't really want to talk about my job all the time. So it's really nice when you get that break and you get to talk about something else more fun.
Yeah, does anyone want to add to that? Okay. Yeah, I would just say, oh, Alex, did you want to say something?
Well, I feel like I'm going to repeat this a million times, that it's different virtually, but just keep in mind, like different schools prepare in different ways for networking. And again, everyone's here to help. And I remember at my first O4U, I connected with a senior. I was a sophomore then as well. And I connected with a senior who wasn't an official mentor or anything, but he helped me so much. And just like learning, or showing me the ways in which he had learned to network. And yeah, just rely on your peers as well when you're not sure what to do. So it's pretty scary, especially if you're an introvert, which is completely understandable, and doing it all like virtually can be exhausting as well. But yeah, just rely on your peers.
Yeah, and sorry, Alex. I'll hop in here too. I think given the virtual nature of the conference, some skills that might be helpful, some tools might be, particularly in the affinity. I found the affinity breakouts to be super helpful. When I started, my first O4U when I was a sophomore in college was the fall of 2014, and I was the only woman and the only person of color in my mentor group for most of the weekend. And I know that's vastly different now, which is a great thing that O4U has been doing as an organization. But some of the connections that were most meaningful were at the intersections of different identities. And I think when you find those, particularly in this virtual environment, ask for other people to talk to, right? You're not going to be able to walk around and just hop into conversations like we had the privilege of doing when we were attendees. So make sure to leverage the folks that you do connect with to perhaps find other connections that could be helpful to you. And I think that could actually be a benefit from having a virtual conference. So
true. Just to piggyback off that really quickly, we can make, say I was at RBC and I worked in equity capital markets and we had a really meaningful conversation, but maybe banking or equity capital markets is not something that you're particularly interested in. If you shot me an email saying look, I'm really interested in these kind of things as well, do you have anyone you can connect me with internally, because obviously I know everybody I work with, that's just another way to expand that network. And it's really powerful. And yeah, it's a really great way to also just meet all the other queer people at the company, which is really fun.
Totally. Two things that came to mind for me. One is related to just Alan hinted at it earlier, just being authentic in terms of your conversations and focusing on building authentic relationships over something that's maybe more transactional or focused on, getting as many contacts as possible and then doing the follow-up. Usually that's just less good of a strategy. And one thing sort of related to that, I think related to the authenticity bit, you're all young. A lot of you haven't had experience in the fields that you're interested in, right? And one thing that I was super afraid of when doing the whole networking and meeting and learning thing with sponsors was like saying the wrong thing and sounding stupid. And I think like there's just such a strong expectation that like most of you just don't have as much of the like in-depth, super like nitty-gritty industry knowledge, and there's no expectation that you should try to perform like being an expert in any of the fields. And I think that most you know, sponsor attendees are way more open to like helping you learn and helping you like get the information that you need to succeed, as opposed to you trying to like impress them with something. That's something that I think is just like really good for building those authentic relationships, and also just like learning more about the fields that you're interested in instead of pretending to know things, which is something that I've just like seen people do and have done myself in the past. So we focused a lot on, you know, the sort of sponsor networking side, but there are also a ton of other students here that you'll get to meet over the weekend. Alex, could you maybe talk a little bit about, you know, the experience meeting other LGBTQ folks throughout the content and programming that you went through, and what that was like, if there were any fears there?
I'm just laughing because Christian and I have become really good friends because of the conference, and so yeah, it's like public knowledge. But I guess you wanted to focus more on the first conference itself rather than the future, or
just like if there's like, I don't know, again, like for me it was I had never been in such a queer space before, and I didn't really know what that was going to look like. I don't know if that was your experience, or if you had any sort of guidance or tips or experiences related to just like being in this type of a space for the first time.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, like I said in the beginning, the conference was absolutely life-changing for me. Like, it changed my whole college experience for the better. I actually started a student organization on my own campus related to being queer and like interested in careers in business later on, because I wanted this community so badly. I really feel at home in this community. I went to school in San Diego, and when I came to New York, it was amazing because of all the people I'd met specifically at my first conference, and how I was able to connect to all of them later on. So all I can say is like those first connections that you make, they can really last, hopefully forever, and just give you a sense of security. And I absolutely felt like I had found my space. And yeah, I mean, I keep that space around me now anywhere I go. I live in London now, and the first thing I looked for was like LGBTQ, you know, meetups in London, and so, like business people in London. Anyway, I'm just rambling now, but yeah, that's my point of view.
Yeah, Alan or Evelyn, do either of you have maybe any experiences that you could share about how like relationships that you built at the conference sort of carried forward post-conference, or how that sort of developed within the O4U framework outside of like the sponsor?
For sure, yeah. I have a few really, I think, concrete examples. You know, in that first mentorship group that I'd mentioned, even though I was the only woman and the only person of color, everyone was really, you know, kind and friendly to me, and welcoming. And one of the folks that I met there, I think Tyler's a panelist at some point this conference. I know he's always involved. Tyler Nelson was, you'll probably be hearing from him later, but he was in my breakout group. I got so lucky to be in a breakout group with Tyler, and he was really great and thoughtful, and asked me what it felt like, you know, to be the only woman and only person of color in my group. And then when it came time to, you know, apply to internships for junior year, I saw that he'd worked at BlackRock, and that's where I wanted to work. So, you know, I contacted him, and he helped prepare me for my interviews at BlackRock, for the BlackRock Founder Scholarship, and he connected me with people in the groups that I was interviewing with. So, you know, there's a concrete example of, you know, being a shy sophomore and meeting Tyler and him being so helpful. And then someone else from O4U at our BlackRock Super Day named Gabby Santos. We actually prepared, we reviewed markets information together. So I always joke I wouldn't have gotten my job at BlackRock if Gabby hadn't kind of briefed me on what was going on. But just super, super helpful folks. And I think as everyone here has mentioned, your peers are maybe as helpful as mentors or sponsors are. And you should definitely make sure to keep that community around you strong.
Totally. So just sort of following up on that, we've sort of hinted at it before. This conference is virtual. How do we sort of adapt to that from the sort of perspectives that we've just shared? Like, obviously those were all very in-person experiences. Do y'all have any tips on how to sort of navigate that in this particular setting? Maybe Alan.
Okay, yeah. Honestly, what Evelyn said, like, utilize the small group experiences that you'll have, like whether that's your mentorship group, which I know y'all are going to later this afternoon. Maybe it's like the affinity groups and the small breakout lunches that we have throughout the weekend where you can like have more of that interaction with other people. I know it's kind of hard right now when we're all in a session and you all can't see each other, but utilize Slack. Slide into someone's DMs, it's okay. Yeah, and I think there might be some sort of like, and I know I had this as well, like I definitely felt like, ooh, am I being too annoying? Am I like overstepping my bounds? Like, no. We're all in the same mindset. We're here to meet people. Like, that's why this conference is so impactful and empowering. To give an example, like when I was visiting business schools, I was looking up who was in the queer organization at the school I was interested in, and I found out that one of the members was an organizer when I came as a junior. I've never talked to this person. And I just cold emailed him saying, hey, like, you were my admissions director when I was like a first-time attendee and I want to come visit. Are you free? He's like, yeah, let's go get coffee. I'm gonna bring all my queer friends. You're gonna like get the full like experience. So just utilizing and being, I guess, unafraid to reach out is such a big step, because I know that's a huge hurdle for many people and myself personally.
Sweet.
Sorry.
Go for it, Alex. Sorry.
Just something to add here, because I guess I have some sort of example. But like I said, I started my own like queer business organization on my campus after O4U, and actually I had connected to somebody from Berkeley, like kind of very remotely at the conference. Maybe we had just barely met. I can't even remember now, but we're both in California. So I said, you have an organization at Berkeley, I have an organization down here in San Diego. Like, there are funds that the university has for organizations to travel. So why don't we just like come up to Berkeley and like hang out with you guys for a weekend? And that's exactly what we did. We just like applied for some funds to travel up there. And so the two organizations got together, and now a lot of us are really good friends, and we just like connected. It was all through O4U, and there were obviously students in both organizations that didn't get a chance to go to O4U, so we just kind of expanded the circle and the community. So yeah, just something else that came out of it.
Yeah, that's super cool. Thanks for sharing. I do want to ask one more like slightly businessy, really like the intersection of identity and business before we go more toward the identity questions. But I think this is really important. As attendees are navigating the sort of interviewing, networking process, do any of you have any questions you might recommend that they ask interviewers to understand like where a company stands on diversity and inclusion? And then sort of along those lines too, do you recommend that these types of questions are asked during the interview process? What have your experiences been like sort of learning about how companies operate in this environment?
Oh, absolutely. I know it's tough, and it's obviously easier for me to say this because I've worked in these companies already and I have a job, but if your company that you're interested in working at is not willing to put the money where their mouth is and provide the actual benefits for underrepresented minorities, do not work there. It's not worth your time. Be very direct and thoughtful in terms of like asking like, what are the structured ways in which your future company is providing for its underrepresented minorities, specifically queer people? How, like, are there actually like queer people in senior leadership positions at these companies? Like, is there actually a track for you to go from analyst to MD? Like, not that, you know, I would recommend staying in banking to become an MD, but, you know, in case you want to. I think that's really important. Other thoughtful questions to ask, like, you know, once you establish this connection, again, asking about, like, do they know people in other groups that you might be interested in so they can make that introduction for you? If you feel comfortable, you should definitely ask them to, like, give you a mock interview, because that's so helpful. Particularly pay attention to the language that they use in any of these interactions. Like, pay attention to how these sponsor reps talk about their own company, because that's language you can reflect back to your interviewer when they ask, oh, why do you want to go to RBC? And it's because, like, oh, I met XYZ person, they said blah, blah, blah. They love a name drop. Yeah, I think those are kind of like really important things. And obviously, just coming from like a banking background, the 3 questions everyone asks is, tell me about yourself, why do you want to go into banking, why XYZ firm? And I think that's pretty ubiquitous for all the different companies at this conference, actually.
Yeah, and I think the why XYZ firm is just so important, right? Like, you can be happy in your role, you can be as passionate as you are about it, but at the end of the day, like, the people you work with, the environment that you're in, you want them to be supportive of your identity. So it's just like super important, I think, to understand the types of resources and culture that exist at the firms that you're applying to. So now moving a bit away from the business stuff, I want to talk a little more about the aspects of the conference related more to identity. So how would you say the conference helped you all more fully embrace your unique identities, whether in the workplace or outside that context altogether? Does anyone have any experiences? Maybe we can start with Evelyn.
Yeah, for sure. I think to Alan's point as well, just on you know, interviewing the firm as well, is, you know, them interviewing you, which is, I think, lexicon that you're going to hear over and over again this weekend. But I think that you know, just make sure, you know, you're really getting to know folks. And I know it's tough. I think for me, I gravitated towards the firms where I felt like I could see myself with folks. And this is a BlackRock shout out, because that's where I worked. And I think, you know, I know the BlackRock crew is strong still. So I think, you know, you're lucky that or not lucky, we deserve to be talking to firms that accept us. But you should anticipate that these firms have really solid responses to any questions and are here because they care about advancing careers for LGBT folks. And you need to discern on your own if their responses and the folks representing them align with you. And that was kind of my method of interviewing folks. And like I said, meeting Tyler, you know, and liking him and knowing him, I figured I could work here. And same with everyone really that I met from BlackRock. I felt like the folks that headed up the LGBT network at BlackRock, you know, I could see myself working with them. The conversations were earnest. So, you know, I think it's great that there's already kind of this preface of these firms are here because they want to advance LGBTQ folks, and also make sure that if you have specific needs, those are being met too. You know, I think we're at a point where you should be asking about intersecting identities. I have Audre Lorde up here on the wall for a reason. So you know, so yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Alex or Alan, did you have any, so maybe outside of like the workplace context, was there any way in which like you felt like the conference led to you feeling more able to like embrace who you were ex post?
Yeah, definitely. It just gave me kind of the confidence to know like there are more of us, and we all want jobs, and also all these companies actually are here because they want us, you know. More, yeah, I mean, like as Evelyn said, you have to kind of look for, I guess, your vibe in these companies, and that's super important. But mostly the conference and meeting other students and meeting the mentors that gave me so much hope that I can be who I want authentically at these conferences. And I went into accounting, and of course, you know, there are the big four, they all kind of like do the same stuff, and you kind of have to figure out, okay, like where do which one of the big fours is the right one for me? So I think definitely use this conference to kind of figure out if there are some companies that are very similar. Like Evelyn said, just go and figure out if those are the kind of people that you want to spend definitely more than 40 hours a week with.
Totally. I don't want to get negative, but one other sort of like little fear in the back of my mind when I was entering the workplace for the first time as an LGBTQ individual was like, well, what would happen if like someone I worked with, or I had some sort of encounter with a client, or really anyone in that kind of a setting, like didn't accept me for who I was, or said something that was just like inappropriate or offensive to my identity. I don't know if any of you have ever encountered that, or if it's all been very positive for you. But I'd like to hear, you know, has that been something that you've encountered? And if so, how did you deal with that?
I didn't encounter it. I haven't encountered it. I think because my entry point to BlackRock was O4U and or OUBC, I should say, it was just a part of everything I did. You know, I think, you know, all the friends I'd made, and particularly the you know, employee resource group, or ERG, that kind of support. I really felt like everyone in that group was committed to me getting a full-time, you know, offer when I was a summer analyst, me getting the summer analyst role, me getting the scholarship. So, you know, I think I was very lucky. And I also happened to work in a group where the MD was a gay white man. So that was, you know, that was luck maybe, but it was a great, I think, overall situation for me. So no, sorry.
Yeah, I think this is, it's tough because none of us work in like consulting backgrounds, I guess, where there's more client interactions. But this is, I think, an important question that you could ask, honestly, these companies, because I think these are really real concerns. But in terms of like coming out of the company, like Evelyn like said, I was always very involved in the queer organization, so I didn't really need to come out because I'm very visibly and audibly gay. I'm wearing a fucking kimono right now. So I think that these are the tough questions that you all need to ask these companies. Like, what are the, like, I guess the steps? What are there any protocol that the company has in terms of protecting us from these clients? Because I think that's really real. I know that when I was at RBC and when I then transitioned to P, like, because I had already asked these questions, I didn't feel concerned about should anything have come up.
Good, that's really, oh, go for it, Alex.
No, sorry. I also, well, I do, in accounting, you do get quite a bit of client interaction as well, but I'm in banking capital markets, so I work with like large banks, and if there was a client that acted inappropriately, that would just be an absolute no-go. And I've been extremely lucky at PwC as well. Like, they've been absolutely amazing. I had to leave the US because I didn't get an H-1B visa. And my girlfriend, who also works at PwC, you know, we're not married or anything, but when I knew that I had to leave, they immediately said, okay, like, we know you have a girlfriend who works at the firm, like, we are going to get you both over to London. And they did everything. I mean, it took a bit of time, but they shipped her over here and found her a role, and like, it's been honestly incredible. Like, I have not encountered anything negative, luckily. But it does happen, but just, I guess the four of us haven't. I don't know, Christian, you haven't spoken on it yet, but
Yeah, thank you for looping me in because I was going to say something. I think so. Similarly, I've been, I think, pretty lucky to like not have had any really like negative experiences along this front at my firm. But I will say, definitely recruiting for a job on Wall Street, and like having grown up in like seeing the way that's been depicted in like various movies or shows, and like generally having this like sense that it's a very like a culture with tons of machismo, I think was like daunting to me as someone who would probably not fit a lot of the stereotypes that like Wall Street types are said to have. And I think so figuring out and realizing that once I got to my firm, it was like not necessarily all like that, and that there was actually a lot of support for my identity, and a lot of like active interest in who I am as a person, and the way that intersects with my identity, was like really relieving and nice. And I think also through this conference and building relationships with people who are at these firms, and like maybe you have that fear, that belief too. I don't know if everyone has that, but at least for me, like I was definitely sort of nervous about the like, oh, do I have to be like, I don't know, Wolf of Wall Street type to like fit in here, or is that real life? I don't feel comfortable doing that. And so I think like seeing the support for who I am as a person and realizing that like life is not like that was a good learning experience, and I feel very much like I fit in on Wall Street. Yeah. So with that, let's see. I feel like this is sort of an interesting question to throw into the mix. We do have about 8 minutes left though, so let me see. I want to talk about actually the sort of involvement post-conference and the type of opportunities that exist for everyone to stay involved after the conference ends. I think Alan is the first natural fit for this question since he's another director, but what types of things have you seen students do, and what types of opportunities exist for them to stay involved?
Oh yeah, totally. So you can come back, obviously. I came twice. I think a lot of folks on this panel come to the conference multiple times, and it's really lovely when you come back the second time and you like re-see the people that you like met the first time around. It's really lovely. If you do join a sponsor firm, try to be involved on the other side. It's really rewarding actually to be at the conference as a mentor or on a panel. I have a friend who joined a firm that didn't sponsor O4U, and he made that initiative for ZS to sponsor us. And I don't know if they're doing it again this year because he left, but they did it last year, which was cool. But beyond that, I think the connections you make are really like what I think about as staying involved in O4U. Some of my best friends in New York City are through this conference. And just like to plug in, again, like how powerful this network is. When I was recruiting for private equity, I got an interview at a firm and I was like, this firm sounds really familiar. And I did a little like LinkedIn stalking, and I found out that one of the board of directors at O4U actually works at that firm. So I just reached out to him. It's like, hey, like I have an interview. Can I like talk to you a little bit about what's like this company and like what your experiences with it? And he just offered to like mock interview me. He interviewed me. He like did 6 hours worth of prep with me one-on-one. So then I got the job.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, Alex, I remember you mentioning earlier that you had started an LGBTQ organization on campus. What did that look like? And do you have any like tips, advice on like creating similar sort of clubs or infrastructure at schools that people attend?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna like it's tough. It depends on kind of the school that you're in. You have to just find a group of people who are willing to put in the passion. And the problem was mainly, I guess, that I went to the conference. I was like, I was full of like fire for this cause, and I really wanted it to happen. And the other students hadn't gone yet, so they were like, okay, like, do we really need this sort of community? But you find your group of people, and honestly, there are so many students who need this so much. So it was worth like every minute. I absolutely loved it. It's an amazing experience, even for you to create something on campus. Let's see what else I could say to this. I guess my biggest recommendation would be go small. Don't try to address the entire campus, but like find specific groups and maybe in other organizations, but it's absolutely worth it. And I can tell you that in every interview I've ever done, they've asked about this experience of founding my own student organization.
Awesome. And just a few things I want to add in terms of like resources available post-conference or like opportunities to stay involved. You know, one thing for every conference that there is, well, first of all, there are 4 conferences. There is business, but there are 3 others, and you can always, you know, opt to volunteer or support those as alumni. We have this conference every year. We always need volunteers. So if you're available for that and like not at a sponsor firm, you know, that's another way to stay in touch. If you are at a sponsor firm, becoming a mentor, great idea, you should do it. And of course, every year we also have new directors. And so applying for those directorship positions is another way to get more involved in the organization if that's something that you want. And then also we do have these like O4U sort of like happy hours and things that we host or used to host. I guess we still do it virtually. And those are also just like great ways once you're part of the network to, you know, continue to meet people and learn more and stay involved. So I definitely would keep an eye out for those. We have about 3 minutes left. I'm about out of questions. If anyone has any last second questions that they want to throw into the chat on Pathable, I'm happy to take those in these last few moments that we have here. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much done. Does anyone have anything to add panelist-wise?
It looks like someone named Jack has their hand raised, but I don't know if that's intentional. Jack,
well, Jack, if you can hear me, please post your question if you have one. Oh, he took it down
Okay.
in the Pathable chat.
How have you kept in touch with O4U connections after the conference? Sorry, I just hijacked your role, Christian.
Go for it. If you want to answer it, Evelyn.
Yeah, I'll answer. I think particularly in this virtual environment, you know, definitely start a group chat. You know, start a group chat. I encourage like Zoom sessions after this because you won't be able to see each other. But I know folks did that anyway. I feel like Alex, you know, you're really good. I remember staying in touch with folks. So, you know, I think definitely group chats, Slack, whatever it is, that'll help you feel closer, particularly during COVID. You know, everyone's kind of feeling isolated, and this exposure to folks who are queer or, you know, LGBT on the spectrum, and also interested in business is so special. So with the extra time on your hands, you know, definitely reach out to folks.
Sure. Plan a trip after COVID.
One day.
Yeah. I mean, you can travel
hopefully soon
in a country which has its shit together.
With this last minute that we have, I do think there's a really interesting question. So it's how do we best leverage this conference as a recent college graduate, which is sort of a new thing given the way this conference is played out. Alan, do you want to speak to that maybe?
Sure, yeah. So after this conference is over, we're going to be sending you all a jobs board login for, I think it's like at least a year after this conference, which is just another way for sponsors to communicate any job listings, any opportunities on there. So that's another way to stay involved. Honestly, like, I know it's hard to maintain connections, particularly when there's like a pandemic going on. It's tough. But just taking the time, maybe even just a text them like, hey, how are you doing? Like, hope you're doing well. Like, any of that, really. I don't know, it's tough. I know that like me, Christian, and some of the other directors like did a little happy hour just like outside of organizing this, because that was something that really meant something to all of us. So it's just being proactive and reaching out to people. Again, I know I have a lot of problem like reaching out because like fear of rejection, and also like you don't want to be that like you feel like you lose power when you reach out first, but no, that's like some bullshit. Get over it. reach out to people.
Totally. All right, I just want to thank you all again for being here as panelists. Alan, Evelyn, Alex, it's been so great talking to you. And everyone who's attended, enjoy the rest of the conference.